Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Xeno's wisdom sitch didn't seem guarded, she didn't seem insecure, in fact she seemed almost perfect. She laughed at every joke, knew exactly when to lean in, when to pull back, and in the quiet pauses between our words she never looked awkward, she looked practiced. At first I felt lucky, but then I felt something deeper, a question that wouldn't leave we. Does this feel rehearsed? Sedate isn't about judgment, it's about awareness. If you're a man who values connection, realist bonus, connection, then you need to recognize these even subtle signs that what you're feeling might not be a genuine presence, a pattern shaped by many encounters before you. Let's begin. You know that feeling when you meet a woman who just seems to get you instantly, before you even finish a thought, just already nodding. Her eyes were soft, knowing almost to knowing schmears, your body language so effortlessly cross her legs when you cross, your leans in when you lean in, matches your laughter with perfect timing, and you think, wow, we're so in sync. But pause for a second. Bafas, here's the thing, most men overlook that level of calibration rarely comes naturally. It's learned, it's practiced. This isn't magic, it's experience accumulated over time. When a woman has interacted with many men romantically or physically, she learns patterns, refines her ability to read cues, anticipate reactions, adjust tone and timing. She knows what kind of humor will draw a man in, what type of story will tug at emotional thread. She senses precisely when to offer silence and when to fill it. At first it's intoxicating, you feel deeply understood, as though she can read the unspoken places in your mind. But sometimes what you're feeling isn't connection, it's a performance, a well-rehearsed script. This doesn't make her wrong or bad. Experience isn't a flaw, but it's how she wields that experience that matters. Beth, when interaction feels too perfect to smooth, when she seems to anticipate every movie, very thought, every hesitation, it's worth asking quietly, is she here with me, or is she done Shinga dance she's performed many times before? True intimacy is Ronavan. It comes with awkward poses, genuine surprises, moments when two people fumble beer, finding their rhythm, when everything feels rehearsed. Polish cock may not be your chemistry that's clicking, it may be her mastery of male ATT and DON. The danger of rehearsed connection. Why it feels too perfect. Does she truly feel present with you? Does it feel like she's playing a role she knows by heart? Because sometimes what looks like deep connection is really just well practiced familiarity. She shares deep stories, early talks about heartbreak, even on the second date mentions childhood wounds, a calmness that almost feels practiced. At first you feel flattered, you think she trusts me so much as opening up so soon, but pause, look deeper. Sometimes this depth isn't about genuine connection, it's a fast track to closing because she's done many times before. It's become familiar to her, almost automatic. Knows which narratives draw a man in, how to describe past betrayals just enough to invite your sympathy without making it too heavy. She knows the exact right moment to say, "You've never told anyone this before," even though perhaps she's told it many times before, just with slight variations. For her this feels normal now. Routine, a means to bypass awkward gesto, jump straight into what feels like emotional intimacy. But here's the quiet trap for a man craving sincerity. It feels real, it feels like she's letting you into a private, sacred space, but that space may not be as private as it seems, and you may find you're zilflining in faster than you normally would, dropping your guard quicker, trusting deeper, because you believe the connection is rare. But if you pay attention, you might notice something unsettling beneath her words, a rhythm that feels rehearsed, a kind of polished vulnerability, lacks the awkward pauses, hesitations that genuine sharing usually carries. Real intimacy, it takes time, it requires awkwardness, it asks two people to stumble a little, toe reveal, imperfect pichesto, fumble through trust before finding closeness. But when her openness feels too smooth, too immediate, too comfortable, it's worth asking yourself, is this woman truly revealing herself, or is she repeating a script she's learned that brings men closer quickly? Because sometimes sweat looks like vulnerability is real. Just efficiency, an efficient way to build what feels like connection. Bore either of you has really earned it, and when you wake up weeks later feeling deeply connected but strangely unsensual, realize you skipped the journey, and no shortcut can replace what slow real intimacy of how she talks about intimacy. It's casual, almost casual. She jokes about past encounters with ease. Hish throws in a suggestive commentus, naturally, as commenting on the WATHR, the fast track to emotional intimacy. Is it real? At first, it feels refreshing. You tell yourself she's comfortable in her own skin, she's open, she's modern, but Then the pattern begins to show. Sex isn't just part of her conversation, it's woven into nearly every dialogue. Every story seems to have a provocative edge. Memory comes laced within you, and don't when you pause to listen closely. Ona realize her comfort level isn't intimacy, it's desensitization. For some women, repeated exposure to many casual encounters can gradually detach sex from a sacred now feels ordinary. So when she speaks so freely, so confidently, so casually about physical intimacy, it may not always reflect deep self-assurance. It reflects repetition, a history where moments that should have been meaningful were made transactional, and that historious shaped how she relates to closeness. Today's may speak of pleasure without tenderness, may describe past lovers like items on a menish, may laugh about experiences that for others might have carried emotional weight. This doesn't mean she's wrong, or that her history defines her worth, but it does raise a key question for Yui. She's sharing from a place of openness, or from a place of overexposure. Intimacy measured by how comfortably Samin talks about sex. It's measured by how present they are when emotional vulnerability meets physical connection. And for a man seeking something to this distinction matters. This the woman who speaks too casually about sex may not be able to link her heart to her BAFTA anymore. She may treat touch as something separate. Another conversation, another transactionator chapter in a long story of experience, and that kind of detachment can leave a man feeling more alone in the most intimate of moments. So listen, not just to what she says, but to how she says it, where her eyes go when she tells those stories, and whether her confidence is rooted in comfort or in distance. You're lying beside her room is quiet, but not in a comforting way. Months ago there was close and stuck with breath shared, but now almost instantly she's checking her phone, scrolling mindless liar. She's turned away eyes, distant thoughts, somewhere else. Seat. First you tell yourself it's nothing, just to Redmub distracted, maybe just pay attention. This isn't simply about fatigue. For some women, especially those who have had many transient encounters, said habit forms a habit of detachment, separating the body from the heart. Sex becomes something pyccal when sex feels casual, but connection feels missing. A performance, a transaction, a moment that begins and ends on the surface, and when that habit takes root, space immediately after intimacy, which should be a tender, vulnerable time, comes cold. It's not intentional cruelty, it's conditioning. When a woman has lived through many short-term encounters, learns to protect herself by switching off quickly, automatically, the post-intimacy moment when emotional connection could deepen becomes simply a pause before returning to routine. Her gaze drifts, her body language close, and though she's right next to you, physically you can feel her pulling away. Emotional. This leaves a man in an odd kind of loneliness. You were just cozy, and now you're alone in the very same bed, and that loneliness stings back as touch without emotional presence. It can feel emptier than no touch at all. A woman who detaches like this may not even realize she's doing it. It can become a reflex, a way to protect yourself from the vulnerability. True connection to a man seeking real intimacy. Behavior can feel baffling given hurtful sonatis, not just how she behaves during moments of passion, but how she behaves immediately after those. She stay emotionally closer. Those she retreat into distance even while her BAFTA is still next to yours. BAFTA's real connection distant end when the physical moment ends, and if it does, you may not be building intimacy. You may be participating in a pattern where closeness is temporary and distance is habitual. You suggest something, simply a weekend, getaway, dinner with close friends next month, smiles, but her answer feels vague. Just see how things go, she says. Ori, don't really like to plan too far ahead at first. It seems refreshing, you see, going light-hearted, low pressure. Convince yourself this is modern dating, that you found a woman who lives in the momento, but over time that freedom starts to feel like drift, that flexibility starts to feel like avoidance, and you realize it's not about spontaneity, it's about reluctancy, a reluctance rooted not in your personality but perhaps in her history. For some women, especially those who have known many short-term or casual relationships, women starts to feel unfamiliar, uncomfort, maybe even threatening. She may have grown accustomed to relationships with labels without expectations, experience that begin quickly, born brightly, but fade just as fast. So when you suggest something that hints at future connections, instinctively, as final reflection, the cost of mistaking experience for depth, noti, because she doesn't enjoy your company but because permanence feels foreign. Look closely. She may love the fun, excitement, the immediate attention, But when it comes time to plant roots to create continuity, she pulls back. Her words are soft, her tone remains pleasant, but underneath there's a pattern that says, I like this but don't want this to become something that asks more of me, and for a man craving something steady, that pattern can feel confusing and hurtful, because while you are slowly opening your arch, maybe carefully keeping hers just out of reach. This isn't about blaming. Women develop this avoidancy as a response to past hurt, because casual encounters have become the norm. But if you notice this consistent reluctancy to engage with the future, it's worth pausing, not to pressure her but to protect your own heart, because a woman who hesitates every time you suggest building something together may not be ready or willing to step into a relationship. Her emotional presence matches emotional promissory, sitting across from Hirsch's, recounting a past relationship in Something Doesn't Sit Right, talks about being cheated on, shrugs it off with laughs, mentions a man who disrespected her publicly, and dismisses it as just how men are. At first you think she's strong, resilient, but look, Glazer, this isn't necessarily strength Simidius, it's numbness. For women who have had many turbulent or casual encounters, exposure to dysfunction can normalize it. It stops being shocking and starts feeling familiar. She may recount stories that should have caused pain, but her tone is light, almost playful. You hear her talk about arguments, braille, even moments that sound degrading, yet she shrugs, smiles, moves on. This kind of emotional detachment isn't about healing, it's about saturation. When a person sees or experiences too many red flags without space for reflection or recovery, they stop reacting, they build an armor that looks like indifference, but underneath it's exhaustion. And here's the subtle danger: when dysfunction feels normal, chaos starts to feel like chemistry. She may be drawn to instability not because she desires pain, but because stability feels foreign. For a man who values peace and emotional health, this can become a silent wedge. Calm, but she may unintentionalize the familiar turbulence of drama. Even small acts of kindness might confuse her. Even respectful sense may seem boring to her nervous system, because it's not what she's used to. So noticidos, she laugh off patterns that should raise concerns. She normalize mistreatmentos. She speak of toxic situations as if they're ordinary. These are quiet signs that emotional saturations has dulled her sensitivity to harm, and as a man seeking genuine connectional need to ask yourself, am I ready to offer peace to someone you home may not recognize it, or may even reject it, because chaos has become her comfort. Look at how she uses social media, not just how often she posts, but what she posts, and why. Her feed may be filled with carefully posed photos, outfits designed to draw attention, captions that invite flirtation or suggest an openness to validation from strangers. At first you tell yourself is harmless, she's just expressing herself. She enjoys photography, she likes feeling beautiful, and maybe that's partly true, but sometimes this behavior points to something deeper. For some women, especially if those who have received endless attention for their look, social media becomes a mirror that reflects worth, but only when framed by likes and comments. The dopamine hit from each notification isn't trivial, it becomes addictive, a reassurance loop that says I am seen, I am desired, still matter. So even when she's with you present, physically, her attention may wander back to the digital stadia, subtle but constant need to check who's watching, who's reacting, who's reaching out. And here's where the challenge least: one validation becomes a habit. It's hard for her to separate genuine admiration from fleeting attention. Your compliments may land gently, but they compete with the noise of 100 hearts, thumbs, and comments. And for a man seeking real intimacy, this can feel exhausting. Best while you are trying to build something solid, something present, her gaze keeps drifting outward toward an audience that doesn't know her but makes her feel seen. This isn't about blaming her. Social media thrives on this loop, and many people fall into it, men too. But as you side across from her, notice, is she truly here with you, or is she also performing for a always watching, always applauding, but never truly connecting? Because sometimes the greatest obstacle to closeness isn't another person, it's the quiet pull of 1-0 tiny validations from people who will never love her but whose approval she has learned to crave. If this felt familiar, it's not about blame, it's about clarity. Women develop these patterns not out of malice but out of survival, a dating landscape that often rewards surface connection over depth. But for the man who's seeking something deeper, these signs matter, because love should Feel real, not rehearsed, present, not performed. If this resonates, comment below. I'm learning to see beyond the surfacey. And remember, true connecti isn't just about recognizing these things in others, it's about honoring the parts of yours that refuse to settle for something hollow.